The Zeitgeist movement is not a political movement. It does not recognize divisionary notions such as nations, governments, races, religions, creeds, or class. Rather, we see the world as one organism, with the human species as a singular family. Simultaneously, we acknowledge that we depend entirely on our environment, not only in regard to the necessities of life, such as food, air, and water, but also for influence and guidance in regard to life's processes. We recognize and understand that aligning ourselves with natural processes is the most progressive and productive disposition we can have. The Zeitgeist movement, in fact, is the activist arm of the Venus Project, an organization which constitutes the lifelong work of industrial designer and social engineer Jacques Fresco. Simply put, what the Venus Project represents and what the Zeitgeist movement hence condones could be summarized as the application of the scientific method for social concern. One of the greatest discoveries of humankind, which has allowed for tremendous advancement in our abilities on this planet, has been the understanding and application of science. Through the humane application of science and technology to social design and decision-making, we have the means to transform our environment into something exceedingly more balanced, organized, humane, productive, and most importantly, sustainable. As many are aware at this time, both our societal integrity and ecological integrity are in serious question. The current economic system is falling apart at an accelerating rate, with the prospect of worldwide unemployment and destabilization occurring possibly on the largest scale ever seen. Simultaneously, we are courting the point of no return in regard to the destruction of the environment. Given the current state of affairs, many of which will be addressed in the first part of this presentation, the viewer should find that we not only need to move in another direction, we have to.
War, poverty, corruption, hunger, misery, human suffering will not change in a monetary system. That is, there'll be very little significant change. It's going to take the redesign of our culture, our values, and it has to be related to the carrying capacity of the earth, not some human opinion or some politician's notions of the way the world ought to be, or some religious notions of the conduct of human affairs. And that's what the Venus Project is about. The society that we're about to talk about is a society that is free of all the old superstitions, incarceration, prisons, police, cruelty, and law. All laws will disappear, and the professions will disappear that are no longer valid, such as stockbrokers, bankers, advertising, gone forever, because it's no longer relevant.
When we understand that it is technology devised by human ingenuity which frees humanity and increases our quality of life, we then realize that the most important focus we can have is on the intelligent management of the Earth's resources. For it is from these natural resources we gain the materials to continue our path of prosperity. Understanding this, we then see that money fundamentally exists as a barrier to these resources, for virtually everything has a financial cost. And why do we need money to obtain these resources? Because of real or assumed scarcity. We don't usually pay for air and tap water because it is in such high abundance, selling it would be pointless. So then, logically speaking, if resources and technologies applicable to creating everything in our societies, such as houses, cities, and transportation, were in high enough abundance, there would be no reason to sell anything. Likewise, if automation and machinery was so technologically advanced as to relieve human beings of labor, there would be no reason to have a job. And with these social aspects taken care of, there would be no reason to have money at all. So the ultimate question remains: do we on Earth have enough resources and technological understanding to create a society of such abundance that everything we have now could be available without a price tag and without the need for submission through employment? Yes, we do. We have the resources and technology to enable this at a minimum, along with the ability to raise the standard of living so high that people in the future will look back at our civilization now and gawk at how primitive and immature our society was.
What the Venus Project proposes is an entirely different system that's updated to present-day knowledge.
We've never given scientists the problem of how do you design a society which would eliminate boring and monotonous jobs, that would eliminate accidents in transportation, that would enable people to have a high standard of living, that would eliminate poisons in our food, that would give us other sources of energy that are clean and efficient. We can do that out there.
A resource-based economy utilizes existing resources rather than commerce. All goods and services are available without the use of currency, credit, barter, or any other form of debt or servitude. The aim of this new social design is to free humanity from the repetitive, mundane, and arbitrary occupational roles which hold no true relevance to social development, while encouraging a new incentive system that is focused on self-fulfillment, education, social awareness, and creativity, as opposed to the shallow and self-centered goals of wealth, property, and power which are dominant today. The Venus Project recognizes that the Earth is abundant with resources, and that our outdated methods of rationing resources through monetary control are no longer relevant. In fact, they are very counterproductive to our survival. The monetary system was created thousands of years ago during periods of great scarcity. Its initial purpose was as a method of distributing goods and services based on labor contributions. It is not at all related to our true capacity to produce goods and services on this planet. The bottom line is that physical survival and quality of life is based solely on our use, management, and preservation of the Earth's resources. Now, with our ever-growing scientific ingenuity to utilize those resources in the most humane, technologically constructive, and strategic ways, the tradition of labor for money and money for resources now has no legitimate basis.
The major difference between a resource-based economy and a monetary system is that a resource-based economy is really concerned with people and their well-being, where a monetary system has become so distorted that the concerns of the people are really secondary, if they're there at all. The products that are turned out are for how much money you can get. If there is a problem in society and you can't earn money from solving that problem, then it won't be done. The resource-based economy is really not close to anything that's been tried. And with all our technology today, we can create abundance. It could be used to improve everyone's lifestyle. Abundance all over the world if we use our technology wisely and maintain the environment.
It's a very different system, and it's very hard to talk about because the public is not that well enough informed as to the state of technology. Patriotism, weapons, armies, navies, all that is a sign that we're not civilized yet. Kids will ask their parents, didn't you see the necessity of the machines? Dad, couldn't you see that war was inevitable when you produce scarcity? Isn't it obvious? Of course the kid will understand that you were pinheads, raised merely to serve the established institutions. We're such an abominable, sick society that we won't make the history book. They just say that large nations took land from smaller nations, used force and violence. You'll get history talked about as corrupt behavior all the way along until the beginning of the civilized world. That's when all the nations work together. World unification, working toward common good for all human beings, and without anyone being subservient to anyone else. Without social stratification, whether it be technical elitism or any other kind of elitism, eradicated from the face of the earth. The state does nothing because there is no state. Because there is no state. The system I advocate, a resource-based global economy, is not perfect. It's just a lot better than what we have. We can never achieve perfection.
Comme tout se mêle, les deux cœurs à tes lèvres, je deviens un casse-tête. Ton rire me crie de te lâcher avant de perdre pied et d'abandonner, car je ne t'en demanderai jamais autant. Déjà que tu me traites comme un grand enfant et l'on marche ensemble d'un pas décidé alors que nos têtes nous crient de tout arrêter. Il me faut encore et toi d'autres qui m'aiment un peu plus fort, mais ils m'aiment encore. Et moi je t'aime un peu plus fort, et moi ils m'aiment encore. Et moi je t'aime un peu plus fort, mais ils m'aiment encore. Et moi je t'aime un peu plus fort, et moi ils m'aiment encore. Et moi je t'aime un peu plus fort, mais ils m'aiment encore. Et moi je t'aime un peu plus fort.
We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Just leave us alone.
If the only place that's left where we can feel safe is in our homes, at what point does that make our home a prison? Humans are natural explorers, and to feel truly free, we should be able to travel and experience the richness of the world, of beautiful landscapes, the diversity of other cultures. We should be free to talk, meet, discuss, agree, disagree, fight, fuck, love, and experience all that we have to offer each other on a global level. Because right now we aren't free. We hide in tiny boxes, 11 floors up, high-rise apartment buildings. Our society has evolved to include many subversive institutions, namely jobs and schools, both of which determine our access to money and restrict and imprison us by controlling our thoughts and our actions. Why don't we travel the world in search of new horizons, new people, and new experiences? Well, because we don't have enough money, so we have to work. Punch in, punch out, day after day, year after year. And there is no greater torment to the human spirit than a life condemned to monotony and boredom. Work is a prison, because what is a prison if not a place where we are watched, directed, controlled, and corrected by an authority who has the power to punish us if we don't comply? And we train our kids for this imprisonment well. We lock them in sterile school buildings day after day, learning things they don't want to learn from books that make it about as exciting as watching paint dry.
What have we here, laddie? Mysterious scribblings? A secret code? No. Poems, no less. Poems, everybody! The laddie reckons himself a poet. Money gets back. I'm all right, Jack. Keep your hands off my stack. New car, caviar, four-star daydream. Think I'll buy me a football. Absolute rubbish, laddie.
Unfortunately, we have standardized the way children learn about the world, and all this does is create standard citizens. We don't want imaginative and diverse thinkers. We're preparing children for the workplace, because every person is born into debt, into servitude. Money limits people's freedom of access to goods and services, which used to make a lot of sense because there wasn't enough of everything to go around. But now, through advanced robotics and automation techniques, it is clear that we can build a nearly self-sustainable system to, at the very least, provide food, shelter, clothing, electricity, and probably most of our modern comforts as basic human rights to every single person on the planet, no exceptions. And we can start to do this right now. But we have to change our ways of thinking. We have to talk with each other. We have to build bridges, find solutions, and put aside smaller differences. Come together as a species. However, sadly, as it currently stands, the freedom we have over what we do with our lives is limited by our purchasing power, and our freedom to make informed decisions has also been completely massacred in an environment where the media saturates our thoughts daily with nonsense about Al-Qaeda and swine flu.
When I asked about Osama bin Laden's latest audio tape, one of them answered with a question of her own.
Who is Osama bin Laden? Who? He's just a character created by America.
What we've done is put a name and face on exactly what we're supposed to be scared of. We do this all the time, creating fear with almost every media outlet, and people who are afraid cannot think clearly. The fear machine is disgustingly large and all-pervasive. It can be as in-your-face as a trip to the airport, or as deep inside yourself as the fear that you might be too ugly and you need to go buy clothes or makeup. Maybe you're scared because your cruel theistic God might just send you to hell if you don't obey him, and you also might not have the money to cover the car payment this month. Or maybe you live in one of many countries around the world currently being terrorized by war. Maybe you're just scared sometimes and you don't know why.
Please, at least leave us alone in our living room. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value.
With so many subversive outside influences, it's impossible for us to have the freedom to think clearly, to learn freely. Our mind can easily become trapped, and on average we spend 12 hours a day either serving the system at our jobs or soaking in what the media has to feed us. We've created prisons within prisons within prisons, and we're calling it freedom.
Here's what we can do to change the world right now to a better ride. Take all that money we spend on weapons and defense each year and instead spend it feeding, clothing, and educating the poor of the world, which it would many times over, not one human being excluded, and we can explore space together, both inner and outer, forever in peace.
We need a deliberate shift away from this hysteria. We need to cut ourselves off from those things that distract us and learn to become problem solvers. The swine flu pandemic was a complete lie and fabrication. But what if there really was a new black plague, something wiping people out left and right? Do we need fear and mob mentality, or do we need as many people as possible calmly and quickly working to fix the problem? Because that's the other thing. When you create a public that is scared and insecure, you create a public that does not and cannot ever reach its full potential. An actually free society would encourage learning, creativity, and critical thinking from the earliest age possible, rather than sterilizing people's minds with institutions of fear like debt, organized religion, and nationalistic fervor. Children should be free to learn whatever they want, exploring the world without cost and with a wealth of information at their feet. Not told when and exactly how to learn it. Teachers would be anyone who wants to guide young minds, not enforce rules on them. Teachers would be our computers, which can store all of our information. Teachers would be life experience growing up. We can raise children to be free of the prisons we have placed on ourselves, but we can step out of these mental prisons as well. There is more information available to every single person watching this than there was for the entire world population combined 50 years ago. So don't believe anything I say. Go learn for yourself. Learn about what makes you happy. Learn about our world, about anything, but never shy away from the truth, even if it scares you, because nothing is more important than finding truth. The information is all out there, and it's all waiting to be discovered. We're losing our excuses to be ignorant, and we're even losing our ability to be ignorant. The spread and freedom of more and more information isn't something anyone can stop, and its social consequences will be immense. The one thing that this planet hasn't seen in its 4.5 billion years is a truly free human race, and I'm excited to see what happens.
Разберете го крајот на растот на производството на нафта за пократко крпено. Нафтата е ограничен ресурс. На нафтата и се потребни милиони години за да се создаде. Крпено е кога брзината на вадење на нафта ќе дојде до својот максимум и ќе почне да опаѓа. Ова значи дека кога ќе се достигне врвот, побарувачката ќе продолжи да се зголемува додека понудата опаѓа. Зашто се користи нафтата? Од 85 милиони барели нафта кои светот ги користи секој ден, 44% се преработуваат во бензин, 35% се преработуваат во други горива, а остатокот? Асфалт, за фарми ѓубрива, машини, пестициди, заштитен слој за храна, пластика, стиропор, хемикалии во козметика, облека, спандекс, најлон, полиестер. Каква ќе биде иднината по крпено? Едно сценарио. Цените ќе одат нагоре, се распродадено, недостатоци од секакви видови, економска депресија, војни за ресурси, глобално затоплување или нафтата се штеди, со тоа подбарувачката се намалува, чисти, обновливи алтернативи кои се поставуваат за замена, се применува одржлива, локална агрикултура, помалку возила на патиштата и одржлива и здрава иднина. Значи, кога всушност ќе се случи крпено? Се уште има многу дебати на темата, но една работа е сигурна. Тој да се случи, ова е векот во кој мораме да научиме да живееме без фосилни горива.
When we physicists look in outer space for alien life, we don't look for little green men. We look for type 1, type 2, and type 3 civilizations. A type 1 civilization has harnessed its planetary power. They control earthquakes, the weather, volcanoes. They have cities on the ocean. Anything planetary, they control. That's type 1. A type 2 civilization is stellar. They've exhausted the power of a planet, and they get their energy directly from their mother star. They don't get a suntan on the weekend. They use solar flares. They use the power of the sun itself to energize their huge machines. Eventually, they exhaust the power of a star, and they go galactic. They harness the power of billions of stars within a galaxy. Now, what are we on this scale? We are type 0. We don't even rate on this scale. We get our energy from, not from stars or galaxies, we get our energy from dead planets, oil and coal.
Historians will look back and say, holy shit, they were making materials, selling them for corporation profit over and over and over and over again with absolutely no reference to what the planet had and recycling protocols and everything else. They were burning fossil fuels at 1,000,000 times the rate of their actual renewability. They're going to laugh at us, wondering what the hell kind of primitive, dumbass species we actually were, if we even survived to reach that point.
From an extraterrestrial perspective, our global civilization is clearly edge of failure in the most important task it faces, preserving the lives and well-being of its citizens and the future habitability of the planet.
This transition is also the most important because it's not clear if we're going to make it. When we look at outer space, we see no evidence of type 1, 2, or 3 anywhere. No evidence whatsoever. The mathematics say that there should be thousands of type 1, 2, and 3 civilizations in the galaxy. We see no evidence of any whatsoever. And why is that? Because the transition from type 0 to type 1 is the most dangerous of all transitions. We may not make it.
I hope everyone out there will understand that either we change or we die.
War, poverty, corruption, hunger, misery, human suffering will not change in a monetary system. That is, there'll be very little significant change. It's going to take the redesign of our culture, our values, and it has to be related to the carrying capacity of the earth, not some human opinion or some politician's notions of the way the world ought to be, or some religious notions of the conduct of human affairs.
So again, the generation now alive and our grandchildren are the most important generations ever to walk the surface of the earth. We are the generations that will determine whether we make the transition from type 0 to type 1 or we destroy ourselves because of our arrogance and our weapons. Now, every time I read the newspaper, I see evidence of this historic transition from type 0 to type 1. And I am privileged to be alive in the most important era in the history of the human race, the transition from type 0 to type 1.
The old appeals to racial, sexual, and religious chauvinism and to rabid nationalist fervor are beginning not to work. A new consciousness is developing which sees the earth as a single organism and recognizes that an organism at war with itself is doomed. We are one planet.
My name is Peter Joseph. I am currently the de facto founder of an organization called the Zeitgeist movement, which is seeking to alter the current cultural climate, if you will, into something that could be considered actually sustainable for not just one nation or class, but all the world's people. We live in a paradigm now where we have society operating on the idea that we can grow infinitely. Therefore, we keep buying and consuming regardless of how many resources we have. This creates a collision course with nature, which the world is figuring out right about now on many levels, that the Earth is essentially a closed system. It took billions of years to create the minerals we have. It took many, many hundreds of millions of years to create the fossil fuels which govern everything we have. And amazingly enough, we've created this system where we're using all of our resources to create the economic growth required to sustain employment and everything else. And simultaneously, we're diminishing our resources at a near exponential rate, it seems, as population continues to grow. And no one seems to understand that it's an absolute clash and that eventually we're going to run out of pivotal resources and eventually you're going to see things, I don't know, like the human population start to dwindle down.
My name is John Fresco, and I'm going to present the concept of the Venus Project. If you don't want war, if you don't want poverty, hunger, unemployment, you have to declare all the Earth's resources as the common heritage of all the world's people. All the artificial boundaries have to be removed so that people can travel anywhere. It has to be a global society. There are many people that feel, well, let's develop each country. You can't do that because if the Russians do experiments with nuclear materials and the Chinese, that air goes all over the world. So it's very hard to work independently. So I would say, if you want these things, you have to change the way your society operates. We believe here at the Venus Project, we are not civilized yet. As long as you have armies, navies, prisons, police, we are not civilized. No nation is civilized. Being civilized is an ongoing process. The more we learn, the more we know about the environment and human relations, the more we're able to deal with the problems. If we fail to do that, we won't be able to solve problems. If we go with traditional values, we won't be able to solve problems. All of these pump primers do not work. There's always been wars. The wars have continued to get worse, even though the universities today have the most sophisticated equipment in the science labs, the architectural labs, all the labs, and the wars are getting worse. The explosives are getting worse. Since the atom bomb, the explosive power is much worse. So there's something definitely wrong with all cultures. When I say wrong, I mean that the system doesn't work. Now, to talk about a system that does work is a little foreign to our habits of thought, so I'm going to try to explain how we make decisions. Actually, we don't make decisions, we arrive at them.
The only way a real society can operate, period, is in a steady state economy, meaning you don't have the mechanism of constantly needing to do anything other than being sustainable in your everyday living and having society recognize the attributes of sustainability which are required. That's the value system orientation needed to create a stable society. As a brief extension of this, we live in a materialistic culture. We live in a culture that's predicated on inferiority and people thinking that they need more and more and more because of many reasons, because of someone else having more, status-oriented issues, so on and so forth. And that fuels into this mechanism of the growth economy, of getting more and more holidays, people give each other gifts. These are inventions for economics.
As long as we use money and the bottom line is profit, then those who control the money are able to make the laws in their favor. And that means that they really don't care about people. They care about wealth, property, and power when that is the main incentive. So when we use a monetary system, there is no justice within this system. There's no making this system equitable. What we need is an entirely new system that we call a resource-based economy.
In regard to social operation and how to create a new society, or better yet, just to say to create any society that would be sustainable and efficient, there's really an empirical train of thought, if you will, of how to do that. First of all, you have to think about what the human being actually needs. We require resources at the bare minimum. We require food, water, etc., as we all know. Therefore, resources become the most paramount subject. Resources, in fact, should be the foundation of any economic structure. So what do? If you consider that the Earth is a closed, finite system?
First thing you have to do is do a survey of the Earth's resources and the carrying capacity of the environment. If you produce a population far in excess of the carrying capacity of the environment, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have malnutrition and all the problems that go with it. So first we have to find out what can each successive environment carry and maintain a population in accordance with the carrying capacity of the earth, not what I like or somebody else likes or some politician's notions. It has to be based upon the carrying capacity of the earth.
To organize a structure based on the intelligent management of the Earth's resources, you start from essentially the base level of where is everything. So you look at the planet and you say, okay, we have iron ore here, we have petroleum deposits here. If we were using petroleum at that point in time. In the future, hopefully will not be because it's damaging. We have places for great wind energy here. You get the point. We can assess the entire environment of what we currently use based on our technological facilities at that point, and we start to create a structure of analysis, maintenance, and management, and basically monitor and understand what we have.
Then we can design the parameters for the new society. Without a survey, we couldn't do that. Survey means physical disabilities, all the known diseases. That tells us how many hospitals we have to build. Of course, the survey would include available materials. Otherwise, if you just sit down and turn out a hospital or turn out a social plan, not based on what you have, not based on what Fresco believes, only statistical evidence. The end of what's your opinion should have been gone in 1927.
Then you move to the next level. How do we utilize resources in the most efficient way? Technology is the methodology to harness any type of resources we have. Technology is the growing intellectual field that allows us to know how to manipulate our environment for our betterment and to be more sustainable, hopefully. So what we do is we utilize our technical information, and then we analyze the planetary resources. Then we build from the ground up an entire infrastructure, not based on the whims of any type of ideology, capitalist, socialist, fascist, whatever, what have you, communist. You do it based explicitly on the most efficient means to do it with the most peak efficiency possible based on the technology available at the time, the intellectual resource of the time. You have peak efficiency and sustainability as your goal. You just simply weigh all parameters when you analyze anything, and then you're going to build a society that is essentially, for lack of a better expression, perfect. It's not perfect at all because things are going to constantly change, but it's the best you can do at that point in time, which I think would be a variance of perfection.
Is the best tool ever devised for understanding how the world works. Science is a very human form of knowledge. We are always at the brink of the node. Science is a collaborative enterprise spanning the generations. We remember those who prepared the way, seeing through them also. If you're scientifically literate, the world looks very different to you, and that understanding empowers you. There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality. We can do science, and with it, we can improve our lives. There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality.
The story of humans is a story of ideas that shine light into dark corners.
Scientists love mysteries. They love not knowing. I don't feel frightened by not knowing things. I think it's much more interesting. There's a larger universal reality of which we are all a part. The further we probe into the universe, the more remarkable are the discoveries we make.
The quest for the truth in and of itself is a story that's filled with insights.
There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality.
We can do science, and with it, we can improve our lives.
There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality.
The story of humans is the story of ideas that shine light into dark corners.
From our lonely point in the cosmos, we have, through the power of thought, been able to peer back to a brief moment after the beginning of the universe.
I think that science changes the way your mind works, to think a little more deeply about things.
Science replaces private prejudice with publicly verifiable evidence. There's real poetry in the real world. Science is the poetry of reality.
We can do science, and with it, we can improve our lives.